This is False Start, a college football podcast for everyone and everyone else. I'm your host, John Buhler, lead writer for FanSided. As you can see today, I am flying solo like a cup. Cody Williams wanted to be here, but for New Mexico reasons, he can't. He's got to fly across the country to go to a wedding here in Nashville, and yeah, some stuff kind of got tied up here. He really wanted to be on the show today, but you know what? I'm going to come to you guys semi-live with Solo Like a Cup here on Wednesday night for Thursday's show. And then I'll be coming to you semi-live again on Saturday night after the conference championships. I'll either be elated because Georgia will be the 2 seed or they will have lost to Alabama again. But yeah, got a lot of exciting stuff to talk to you guys about today. We got the penultimate playoff rankings. We've also got a lot of making and shaking there with the coaching carousel and everything like that. Also, Antonio is getting into some stuff there in a place in the country he's never been before, and I can't be any more excited than that. So let's get started today with our first and 15, which is he gone, he coming, he gone eventually. I'm gonna try to get you guys caught up to speed on exactly what all has transpired here in the coaching carousel since we last did this on Sunday for Monday's show. So here's what I know for sure has happened. Here's what could potentially happen. I'll give some thoughts on the carousel as well. There may be stuff that comes out before the show is live, but then again, I'll touch on that more on Saturday. Definitely on Sunday for Monday's show. It'll be good. So Mark Stoops is out of Kentucky, and he is now being replaced by Oregon offensive coordinator Will Stein. Stoops had been at Kentucky for, I believe, 13 years, the longest tenured head coach in the SEC. Now I think it's only Kirby Smart. He's been there since 2016. The next second longest tenured coach in the SEC is Eli Drinkwitz going back to 2020. It's unbelievable. But I was kind of calling for Stoops to be out after how pitiful Kentucky looked at the end of Commonwealth. I mean, they played eight shell coverage. Louisville ran the ball all over them. Kentucky was 5-6. They needed to win that game to go a bowl game. They got shut out 41-0. I think people have gotten really tired of Mark Stoops. First 8 years of his tenure there in Lexington were fantastic. The last 4 or 5, not so much. So they felt that they wanted to make a move because Kentucky had just become an absolute embarrassment offensively, which is why they've kind of gone in the direction to go bring Will Stein in over from Oregon. And Will Stein's like my age. I think he's like 35, 36 years old. He was the guy who replaced Kenny Dillingham as the OC there at Oregon. But he played his college football in state. Granted, he played for rival Louisville. But Cody and I were always talking like Will Stein's probably going to come back to the East Coast at some point. We thought a job like Virginia Tech might make sense. Maryland might make sense. Kentucky wasn't necessarily on our radar, but it makes sense in a lot of ways. They're trying to get some sort of offensive identity here. You know, we all remember the Howl Mummy, Mike Leach air raid era and stuff like that. Um, Wildcats need to get more explosive offensively. They kind of like lost their edge once Liam Cohen left for the NFL again. So Stein's going to be with the Ducks through the playoff, through their playoff run, however far they go. We'll touch more on the playoff stuff here in a little bit, but I'm bullish on this move. Again, it's a tough job, but I think that Kentucky kind of outkicked its coverage here a little bit, so I'm excited there for UK. Pat Fitzgerald is officially going to take over at Michigan State. It was very quick how Michigan State moved off Jonathan Smith after just 2 really bad seasons. And Pat Fitzgerald, I think he kind of got acquitted of all the wrongdoing that he was supposedly tied to at Northwestern. That's neither here nor there. This is a guy who, had been tied to UCLA before, maybe not necessarily this year, but in years past. Of course, Michigan State's going to hire some guy with baggage. It's kind of amazing. Like the football team is one way, and the basketball team under Tom Izzo is in a completely different direction. But look, Michigan State's got to get back to being, not a doormat. This is arguably a bottom 4, bottom 3 team in the Big Ten right now. I would say they're right down there with Purdue, who's clearly rebuilding. You could probably throw 3 or 4 other teams in the mix as well. Maryland, Wisconsin, you name it. But Michigan State had to get more. They needed an identity, and they needed a guy with a big presence. Jonathan Smith kind of felt very comatose on the sidelines there, and I thought that was a really bad fit for them. Obviously, he's still back. He's back in the market. You kind of wonder if Oregon State jumped the gun in hiring Jamarcus Shepard away from Alabama when they could have gotten Jonathan Smith back. But I don't know. The game's changed there. Oregon State's not in the Pac-12. It still is, but the Pac-12 is not the Pac-12 of old. So it'll be interesting to see where Jonathan Smith ends up at Pat Fitzgerald to Pat Fitzgerald, not Fat Pat Fitzgerald. Pat Fitzgerald going to Michigan State. I think that injects some sort of energy into the Spartans. I kind of thought Pat Narduzzi could be a fit there, but like he'd probably tell him to kiss his ass, so that's funny. A couple of guys who are going to be staying put. Bill O'Brien is going to stay at Boston College. He went 2-10 in his second year there in Chestnut Hill, book ending it with wins. The problem is you lost your middle 10 games. Very tough job. I know they want to give him a little more time here. It doesn't seem like it's going to get much better. Obviously, with Tommy Castellanos leaving, that really put the Eagles behind the eight ball offensively. One of the worst teams in the country in the Power Four by far, certainly in the ACC. But they're going to give Bill one more year. We'll see what happens. Penn State is really, really going through it right now. They tried to poach a lot of different candidates. Um, Shortly after a Monday show, it looked like they were going to try to get Kalani Sitake, the BYU head coach. They were going to try to pry him away from his alma mater. And then the cookie crumble guy was like, "That's not how the cookie crumbles, bro." He's like, "You know what? I'm going to keep Kalani Sitake here for a while." A lot of boost with NIL. I think he's going to be making about 9.5 million a year. They don't necessarily have to disclose it publicly because BYU is an LDS private institution, so they can do whatever they want. But look, you had to get out ahead of this if you're BYU because you're playing in a huge game. You're playing in the Big 12 championship. If you win, you make the playoff, you steal someone's bid. Texas Tech's going to make it no matter what. Also, Joe McGuire got an extension too, so they want to make sure. I think his is a 7-year deal. I think Sataki's like 5 or 6, but like the two of the best coaches in the Big 12 are staying put. Brent Key got extended at Georgia Tech. There's also some sort of stuff out there where like maybe Penn State would want him as well. Jeff Brom as well. Again, why does Penn State keep wanting to go after guys at their respective alma maters? Like it's going to take a lot to get Satake, Key, and Brom to leave. So that was the Brom stuff kind of came later. At this point, they're starting to probably gain some more momentum to promote Terry Smith from within and see what happens. You give yourself the Deshaun Foster, Zach Arnett shot. If it works out, great. If not, you can go hire somebody else. Penn State's a disaster. I think they have the 150th best recruiting class this cycle. That team's going to be awful next year. And as far as people that are taking over for sure, we do have two more ones that are going to be updated in addition to Pat Fitzgerald and Will Stein. Neil Brown, former West Virginia and Troy head coach, he's going to be taking over for Eric Morris at North Texas. He had been an analyst on Steve Sarkisian's staff there in Texas. I think this is a great hire. I think Neil Brown was a fantastic guy at Troy, won a lot of big games, went to West Virginia, which was kind of a thankless job. It's really not been the same since the first time Rich Rodriguez was there. I think Neil Brown's gonna have a lot of success in North Texas. He kind of fits there. But again, Eric Morris came in there and brought the Mean Green to heights we haven't seen, in 50 years since Mean Joe Green was playing there. And how do I say it? How do I say it this way? Neil Brown has won at other places before, but like you kind of wonder, like, maybe he would have considered Kentucky. That was a job that, he played at, that's one of his alma maters and everything like that. But I think it's a good landing spot for him. I think he's going to come in there and do a lot in the American. If not, then the Mean Green are gonna have some issues. And the big shocker for today on Wednesday, December 3rd, heading into Thursday, December 4th, is Brian Hartline. Yes, the Ohio State wide receivers co-offensive coordinator is going to leave Ohio State, leave his alma mater at the end of the year to replace Alex Golish at South Florida. Apparently, this was the number one hire that everybody in Tampa wanted. Once they kind of knew that Golish was going to leave, they kind of identified Hartline for this. For me, I'm kind of wondering, like, why didn't he want a Power Four job? Wouldn't he have gone to Penn State? I mean, I understand that's a rival of Ohio State, but like, I don't know. You can recruit, you can get better players there. This hiring is very weird to me. I don't really understand this. And I think more importantly, Brian Hartline prior to this year had kind of just been like, a recruiter, not much of a play caller. But then again, Ohio State's not really played anybody on off worth a damn for the most part this season. The good news for the Buckeyes is Chip Kelly just got let go by the Raiders. And he's the mentor for Ryan Day, and he's coming back to Columbus. That's almost kind of sort of a guarantee. And then finally, the other one that's confirmed is Chris Kleiman, who I was talking great praises about there at Kansas State, thinking that they're going to definitely maybe might be good. Well, maybe not because he's retiring at the end of the year. And it's looking like they're going to replace him potentially with Texas A&M offensive coordinator and Kansas State quarterbacking legend, Colin Klein. Colin Klein, you're tough. We know you're tough. Run the ball. K-State mask, eat your heart out. But again, a lot of these coaches that are still tied to jobs, I think there's four right now that are kind of up in limbo right now. We've obviously talked about Bob Chesney at James Madison potentially taking over at UCLA. That seems like that's the direction it's going to go. But obviously, JMU is playing Troy in the Sun Belt Championship. And if Duke were to beat Virginia and JMU were to beat Troy, they're probably going to make the playoff as a second Group of Five champion, or the fifth highest ranked champion, if you will. Tosh Lupoy, the other coordinator of note there at Oregon, he calls the stuff on defense. He's a Cal Golden Bears alum. I think that would be a great fit there to replace Justin Wilcox. And honestly, if you wanted to replace Lupoy, Dan Lanning could just give I don't know, he could give Oregon grad Justin Wilcox a call and bring him back home. I think that could work out as well. I mentioned Colin Klein leaving Texas A&M after the playoff to potentially go take over at Kansas State. And then it's also looking like Presbyterian head coach Steve Englehart's going to go to UAB. And this is a guy who's been able to have a lot of success there at Presbyterian without necessarily having scholarships. Kind of a complete departure from Trent Dilfer, but honestly, I think that's what UAB needs. So again, Chesney, Lupoy, Klein, and Englehart are not official yet. Right now, the jobs that I know as of like 7:30 p.m. Eastern on a Wednesday, December 3rd, UCLA is still technically open. Penn State's still open. UAB is still technically open, as is Cal. UConn is still open. Memphis, Coastal Carolina, Tulane. They're looking kind of at potentially Blake Baker, the LSU defensive coordinator, potentially Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator there at Miami. Tulane might be like the next domino to fall. We'll see what happens with Penn State coming up. And then, obviously, if Bob Chesney leaves, James Madison, that opens up that other job. So the cycle's not quite done yet, but it's turned a lot here in the last few days since the end of the regular season. I know Cody probably had a lot more thoughts here right there, but I just want to make sure I got that all out there as well. Again, I think of the ones that are new, I really like of the ones that are new, the bigger moves. I think Will Stein in Kentucky gives that thing some juice. I mean, Pat Fitzgerald to Michigan State feels slimy, but Michigan State's always slimy. I don't understand the Brian Hartline one, but again, I could be wrong there. I'm not the biggest fan of that hire initially, but I've got to spend a little more time to think about that. Again, once the carousel is completely closed, it'll probably reopen at some other point. But once it does close, Cody and I will kind of power rank them and talk about which ones we like. Because again, we don't know. There's some coaches that we think aren't going to work. Like I didn't think that Kenny Dillingham was going to work, and it has. There's also ones where I didn't think it was going to work, like Luke Fickell, and it absolutely has not worked. So yeah, that's what I got right there from he gone, he come, and he gone eventually. So let's move on to our second topic of the day here with you better Euro check yourself before you wreck yourself. So I'm going to split this up because initially Cody was going to break my brain. So Euro check's going to be one segment, and then Goldilocks is going to be the next one. So I'm going to go through the top 25 teams in the playoff mix. I'm going to list them off 1 through 25, and then give a few thoughts about each quintile. Top five is Ohio State at 1, Indiana at 2, Georgia at 3, Texas Tech at 4, Oregon at 5. Ohio State and Indiana are pretty much going to be get first round buys. One of them is going to be the 1 seed. Whoever loses may be the 3 or 4, depending on what happens there in Atlanta and Arlington. If Georgia wins, they're going to be the 2 seed because they will have won the SEC. If they lose, they'll probably pull back somewhere 4, 5, and 6. Texas Tech, so long as the Red Raiders beat BYU, they're going to get a first round bye. I don't really see anybody potentially jumping them, but if they lose, it'll be very interesting to see how far they may fall down the rankings. I think they control their own destiny to get a seed, a first round bye. Oregon at 5, I get it. They've been steady. I don't necessarily like or trust this team, but I get it. 6 through 10, these are the teams that are above the cut line. These are effectively your last automatic qualifier bids. You get Ole Miss at 6, Texas A&M at 7, Oklahoma at 8, Alabama at 9, Notre Dame at 10. Again, they moved Texas A&M down, I think what, 4 spots for losing to Texas. Ole Miss is behind Oregon because of the Lane Kiffin of it all. Oklahoma's still at 8. I think it's interesting they moved Alabama up for winning the Iron Bowl by essentially forcing Auburn to fumble. They're ahead of Notre Dame. Effectively, what that means is if Alabama loses the SEC championship to Georgia to fall to 10-3 on the year, they're going to be the 10th seed. I don't necessarily see them falling out unless they get absolutely blown out, which, let's be real, that doesn't happen because Alabama always beats Georgia. So let's keep that in mind. Below the cut line, 11 through 15, BYU, Miami, Texas, Vanderbilt, and Utah. Right now, I think only BYU and Miami have a shot to get in. I think Texas, Vanderbilt, and Utah, it's too steep of a climb. Here's how it's going to work for BYU. If BYU beats Texas Tech in the rematch in Arlington, they're going to make it in, and they're going to go from the first team out to probably I don't know if they'd be hosting a home game, playoff game. They might. I mean, I'd put them ahead of Alabama and Notre Dame there. I think that they would earn a top 8 seed potentially. I don't know. You could probably do that. You could probably knock Oklahoma down. You could put them in at 8, have them play Oklahoma. I think that'd be fun. But if you lose, obviously you don't make the playoff, and we don't have to worry about the cut line there with Notre Dame. As for Miami is concerned, this was something very interesting. I wrote about this for Kane's Warning earlier this morning. Wow, that kind of rhymes. ESPN's Heather Dinich was at the board last night during the at the very tail end of the playoff selection show, and she was like, "Hmm, this is very peculiar. I feel like the head to head with Miami beating Notre Dame head to head, they have the same record. If if BYU loses to Texas Tech, BYU is going to pull back because they're not in it anymore. And Heather Dinich was like, at that point, you're going to have to move Miami up a spot by default to 11. And at that point, does the head to head matter? And again, I'm not Bruce Feldman here, just basically swearing and saying that Hunter Yurchek and the guys just making it up as it goes. But like at that point, you really have to wonder if Miami is going to get in over Notre Dame. Look, Notre Dame has won 10 games in a row. They don't have a bad loss. They've lost to Texas A&M and Miami. One team that's certainly in the playoff, another one that's like at around the cut line. Miami has 2 bad losses to SMU and Louisville. Neither of them are ranked, but you own the head to head. That has to matter at some point. It'll be a very interesting conversation once we do get to that. 16 through 20 is USC, Virginia, Arizona, Michigan, and Tulane. Again, USC, Arizona, and Michigan have no shot at getting in. They're all 9-3. They've all had really good seasons, but not quite good enough to make the playoff. Virginia is the second highest ranked ACC team behind Miami because they're 10-2 and they're playing the ACC championship. If they beat Duke, they'll be the 11th seed. If they don't, they won't make the playoff. It's as simple as it is. If they lose to Duke, then I think the chances of the ACC not getting a team are pretty high. Of course, if that happens, and then if BYU loses, that that then that's another story for another time. And then Tulane's the highest ranked group of 5 team right now. Again, 10-2. I think that there's a chance that North Texas might be better than them. Maybe James Madison is too, but Tulane's had the pedigree that the other ones have not. They would have made the playoff before a couple years ago. They beat Willie Fritz and the Greenies beat Caleb Williams and USC in the Cotton Bowl. They're effectively there. John Summerall's a fantastic coach. Again, he's going to be coaching through this, before he goes to Florida, throughout their playoff run potentially. So that's good. And then 21 through 25, you got Houston, Georgia Tech, Iowa, North Texas, and James Madison. Again, Houston, Georgia Tech, and Iowa don't really factor much into this. They've all had good seasons. And then obviously North Texas is basically playing for a playoff spot with Tulane in the American Championship. If you win that, you're going to be probably the 12. If Duke beats Virginia, you're going to get the 11, which at that point, James Madison could potentially get in as as number 12 because the ACC might get shut out unless Miami gets in it as an at-large team. It's absolutely mental, to be straight honest with you. So yeah, that's kind of where it is right there with your check yourself before you wreck yourself here. Phone's about to do something dumb because that's just how it goes this time of night. Okay, okay. Now we are good. Let's move on to, you know what? Let's move on to playoff Goldilocks here for our third topic of the day. I got three teams that I think that the committee is too hot on, three that are too cold on, and they kind of have a group of teams I feel like they're just right on. As far as too hot, I think that they're too hot on Notre Dame, Oregon, and Texas. The Notre Dame of it all, it coincides with the Mario Cristobal of it all. Like, I still kind of feel that I don't know if their wins are really of that much quality right now. I mean, yeah, you beat USC, and that's why USC's up there. But they were never a playoff team. They that kind of ended like once they lost to Oregon. But like for you to be ahead of Miami at this point when they beat you is probably the biggest discussion point in the entire playoff field at this point, with all the last sort of at-large stuff here. So again, I'm not in favor of Notre Dame getting in over Miami. I think they're the more steady team, but you have to have the head-to-head has to matter at this point because otherwise you're just making it up. Oregon at five, I think that's a little rich, and I don't think that they would deserve to get a first round bye. Like the way that that would happen effectively is if Georgia were to lose to Alabama, and maybe I don't know if Alabama would go from like 9-4. That'd be kind of rich. I kind of find Oregon to be a bunch of fake tough guys. I mean, the one team the one game they lost at home by 10 to Indiana, who I think is just a more steady team. I don't necessarily like how Dane Lanning's really kind of turned heel, having his players be chippy at fans and everything like that. That's not particularly great. And honestly, I think that they would moved ahead because they're giving them that clout for the USC win. I kind of think the Big Ten's kind of ass for the most part. I think Ohio State and Indiana are good. Or Oregon's fine. I have no problem with them being in the playoff, but like this was always going to be a three-team league this year. And I think if Ole Miss would have put it this way, if Ole Miss would have had Lane Kiffin, they'd be ahead of them. And I think that'd be much better. Obviously, Texas A&M threw up all over itself. And then, got Oklahoma and Alabama with two losses, although Alabama could get a conference championship and Oregon cannot. So that's kind of what I'm feeling with that. And then Texas being above Vanderbilt, even though they beat them head to head, that bothers me because look, Vanderbilt's had its best year ever. They won 10 games for the first time in program history. They're the last Power Four team to ever do that. And the fact that Texas, of all teams, is boxing them out. Like, could you imagine if Vanderbilt would have been at 13 as opposed to 14? There might have been a pathway for them in. Like, it'd be much more convoluted and crazy than like what we have with Miami, but like it wouldn't be zero. And I feel like they went out and they handled business. They beat the tar out of Tennessee and everything like that. And I was just kind of wondering, like, they took care of business in a way that I didn't think was I feel like they did what they needed to do and they still came up short. And obviously, they're looking for the quality win there. Well, it's not their fault that they beat Mizzou and Mizzou fell apart. It's not their fault that they beat LSU and LSU fell apart. It's not their fault that they beat Tennessee and Tennessee's no longer ranked. It's kind of a quid pro quo with that. Obviously, you lost to Texas. You played very tough, and you got pushed around by Alabama, but that sort of happens. Honestly, like I don't know if they would necessarily be able to compete with the same amount of players and stuff like that, but I think that they might have earned their way more into the playoff than Texas A&M. People in a College Station may not agree with me because, of course, they won't. But I kind of feel that like Vanderbilt's kind of had to play up, whereas I think Texas A&M was just kind of being a big fish in a small pond, and then they get relocated to a bigger pond and they get their ass kicked. So yeah, I'd much rather have I would much rather have Vanderbilt in over Texas, which is why I've got Vanderbilt at too cold. And honestly, you know what? I got Texas A&M actually at too cold too. I think it's seven's a little bit rich there too. I mean, again, it was hard for you to find a lot of teams that they're too cold on. I think the fact that like they had an 11-0 season and like their one loss effectively says you have absolutely no shot at a bye now. Like, why does Oregon have a shot at the bye and they don't? I mean, maybe Oregon's played slightly better teams. They're kind of one of the same. So I feel like, you know what? Maybe you have them ahead of Ole Miss. I don't necessarily know if Ole Miss is, I don't necessarily know if Texas A&M is a better team than Ole Miss, but like Texas A&M should at least be have like a 1% chance to at least get a first round bye. They don't now. I think that's kind of my issue. Again, I put these teams down like Tuesday night or last night. I'm like, what's going on here? And then Virginia, I think the two called on Virginia. They should be ahead of Utah and USC. Is Utah and USC better teams? Yes, but I think having Virginia ahead of them would, in a way, I don't know if Duke were to beat them, then Duke would have a shot at maybe getting the 12 seed. But at this point, it's just because the ACC's been so wonky. Like it's basically saying that like Virginia won the ACC in a very down year, which may or may not be true. But they've been battle tested. They've won a lot of games. This is a team that was terrible the last couple of years, and they've broken through in a big way. I don't want this to be looked at as a fluke. I want this to be like, you know what? Virginia was the most steady team in an ACC that was full of chaos this year. And the fact that like, you have teams ahead of them, like Utah and USC especially, who have no chance to make the playoff, like what harm is it putting them at 15? Like, do you think people outside of Salt Lake or Los Angeles are going to care? No. But I think people in Richmond, I think people in Charlottesville, people in the DC area, they might have some things to say about Virginia being at 17. It's like, come on. Like we've beaten some teams. Who is Utah beaten? Like who is USC beaten? Like, maybe a little bit, like, but come on, it's like, why are we propping those teams ahead of them at this point? And then as far as just right is concerned, I think you got the three group of five teams in the right spot with Tulane, North Texas and Memphis, North Texas and James Madison, excuse me. I was not necessarily comfortable with Tulane being super high up there, but I've kind of found that like the brand matters, the helmet matters. I mean, one of your losses is to Ole Miss. So like, okay, like that's what happens. You lose a conference game, big deal, whatever. North Texas has been 11-1 and James Madison's 11-1. North Texas got its teeth kicked in by South Florida, and then James Madison has like a 14-point loss on the road to Louisville. I mean, James Madison's going to lose that game. And then North Texas, like, again, conference games happen. I'm glad to see all three of them ahead of the inside the top 25. So at least we know where the committee is leaning and everything like that. I still think technically Boise State and UNLV have a chance, according to FPI, but not by much. I also feel like the top four, Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia, Texas Tech feel right. You know, Ohio State and Indiana, they're undefeated. They're playing for the number one seed in the Big Ten championship. Georgia's the best one-loss team in the country with a 3-point loss at home to Alabama. Texas Tech has a slightly worse loss. They've lost to Arizona State, but they've been the best team in the Big 12 all season long. Okay, I'm good with all four of them up there. And then honestly, BYU at 11. I think that's another one that's just right because look, you're 11-1. People have doubted you. The one team you've played who's really good in Texas Tech, you got your ass kicked. You beat Utah, but again, they've been boxing themselves in the corner with Utah all season long. I don't really understand it. But if you go in there and you avenge your lone loss the year at a neutral site, you deserve to get in. You'd probably go from being ranked number 11 to like number 8, and you'd be seated 8. And I think that's fair. I think BYU is probably the biggest team of consequence this weekend. Like what they do impacts more than anything. Like Texas Tech, if they were to lose, they'll be like, I don't know, like a 7 seed or something like that. Like they'll probably get a first round home game. I don't know if they'd fall behind BYU. I don't know. It's I can't really do the math here, but like BYU is the first team out with a chance to play its way in. That's all you can really hope for. And on that note, let's move on to the second half of our show here with we are doing a simulation. So I'm going to take the playoff bracket from last night and then I'm going to simulate this. I wrote this up what I think it could potentially happen on Dawn of the Dogs. Definitely check that out. So again, your first four buys are Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia, and Texas Tech. Your 5 through 12, 5 versus 12 is Oregon versus Tulane. For as much as Tulane can probably compete, I think Oregon is going to be very hard to beat in Autzen. I would take the Ducks to win that game. Your 6 through 11, you've got Ole Miss hosting Virginia. I'm going to give Virginia a chance, but I don't think that they're necessarily going to win. They're going to need a fully healthy Chandler Morris. More importantly, I think Ole Miss is going to have Charlie Weiss Jr. calling plays for Trinidad Chambliss and company. I think just Ole Miss has a little bit more octane. And even though I don't necessarily believe that Vaught Hemingway is the most tough environment to play in, it's certainly going to be a very daunting place for the Cavaliers to come in and play. At 7-10, this is the one that I had like the hardest time figuring out. Texas A&M is hosting Notre Dame. Texas A&M beat Notre Dame in South Bend second week of the season by one in overtime. I could go back and forth with this, and I really would have wanted to pick Cody's brain here before I really made the decision. It's really hard to beat a team twice in 1 year. And I think in a way, these are kind of two of the best teams each other has played in some aspects. I would lean Texas A&M here, not really because it's at home. Yeah, I understand Colin Klein might be leaving for Kansas State after this game or whatever becomes of the Aggies in their playoff run. I just kind of feel that like Notre Dame is kind of running with a skeleton crew. They've kind of been like Sherman's March to the Sea. They just kind of keep going and going and going. Like as soon as they stop, they're going to run out of gas. And I think Texas A&M, for whatever reason, they're going to play a little more charged up. They're going to play with a little bit more urgency after kind of getting embarrassed in Lone Star. And most good people at whatever they do respond to failure the same way. They pick themselves up by the bootstraps. They try the best they can. They put forth a legitimately good effort. People handle success differently. And I ultimately think that, like, the coaching is going to be great between Elko and Freeman. Marcus Freeman may have more experience in the playoff than Mike Elko does. Freeman took Notre Dame to the national title last year. He's also been on what the some of the Cincinnati Bearcat staffs there with Luke Fickell and Notre Dame prior to that as well, under Brian Kelly. I think you could potentially get him there. But the reason that I'm going to go with Texas A&M is I just think I trust Marcel Reed to make a play or two more so than I think CJ Carr on the road. Then your final one, you're in the first round, you're 8 versus 9, Oklahoma hosting Alabama. And remember, Oklahoma beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. And I was gonna do this like because you got rematches here. And again, this bracket's not gonna happen because there's no way Georgia's gonna be a 3 seed. Georgia's either gonna be like the 2 or the 5. Like that's really what it's gonna be based on what happens in the SEC championship. I'm gonna take Alabama to beat Oklahoma in Norman. And the reason for this is they might find a way to protect Ty Simpson a little bit better. More importantly, John Mateer is incredibly turnover prone. And if Oklahoma can do it again, I'd be very impressed if they could do it again. But I kind of feel like they kind of delivered their haymaker on Alabama. And if they were to meet him again, I don't know. I trust Kalen DeBoer a little bit more in the playoff than I do Brent Venables. Even though I think they both have ample experience in this, particularly with Venables being the defensive coordinator under Dabo Swinney at Clemson for all those years. So moving on to the quarterfinals, I've got Oregon, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and Alabama all advancing. And the season comes to an end there for Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Virginia, and Tulane. So in the Rose Bowl, I've got Ohio State, your Big Ten champion, is going to play Alabama. It's a helmet game. I don't think it's going to be particularly close. I would venture to guess that Julian Sain and Caleb Downs kick the hell out of their former team. I feel that like Matt Patricia is going to dial up some pressure, similar to what we saw Brent Venables do at Oklahoma. Matt Patricia should win the Frank Boros Award. He's been phenomenal for the Buckeyes this year. And this is a guy that we thought wasn't going to work replacing Jim Knowles. He's been sensational. He's been really good. I think that Ohio State wins by multiple scores. It's never really particularly close. There may be a backdoor cover there by the Crimson Tide, but I would take the Buckeyes to move on. Your Orange Bowl is going to be your 2 versus 7 with Indiana, your Big Ten runner-up facing Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M has more bodies. I think Texas A&M has a little more depth than Indiana does. And I think Texas A&M is well coached. I just think that Indiana is just a little bit more cohesive. I trust them to operate more in unison, whereas in Texas A&M, they may have like, again, this is a roster that still has a lot of impressionables on it. And it's the same reason why I can never really trust A&M or Oregon in the stretch down the stretch anyway, because they have that working against them. You attract a certain type of player. This is kind of what you get. In crunch time, you're not locked into the moment. And I think Mendoza in this situation will outperform Reed considerably. So the Hoosiers are moving on from the Orange Bowl. Sugar Bowl 3-6. This is a rematch of the SEC game with Georgia playing Ole Miss down in New Orleans. Georgia won a barn burner over Ole Miss in Athens several weeks ago. Since then, Georgia has not allowed the opponents to score more than 21 points in the game. I think the most at that point was Mississippi State. Um, even though I think Ole Miss is really talented, I think the Lane Kiffin of it all, the distractions of that, the Pete Golding, Kirby Smart's just going to run laps around them. I think that Georgia wins very comfortably. And then your final quarterfinals game, Texas Tech is going to be playing Oregon. Very good game. Very, very good game. I could see this going either way. I ultimately went with Texas Tech for for really one reason. I think that their defense is just a little bit more punishing. Also, the fact that Oregon is about to lose both of its coordinators to head coaching opportunities, with Will Stein taking over at Kentucky in his native state, and then with Tosh Lupoi taking over his alma mater of Cal. With Joe McGuire and the boys back there in Lubbock, I think for the most part, they're just a little bit steadier and they win by something like 7 or 8 points. So I'll take the Texas Tech Red Raiders to advance. So it's all chalk going to the semifinals in this simulation. Your Peach Bowl is going to be number one Ohio State versus number four Texas Tech. Your Fiesta Bowl, Indiana at number two versus number three Georgia. God, Ohio State gets so lucky here, man. You're going to take the Peach Bowl, and you don't have to play Indiana or Georgia. They have to play each other, and you got to play Texas Tech. It's they're going to win like 41-10. Like Julian Sands like not going to play in the second half. I just kind of feel that like there's going to be like a Baron Morton pick or two. And the game gets ugly very quickly, and everyone's like, "Jeez, yeah, didn't think Texas Tech's all that money went for nothing." And no, it went for something. I think it's Ohio State's just that damn good. And then the Fiesta Bowl. I think this is the best game of the entire tournament. Um, Comes down to the wire. I will take Georgia to win because Kirby Smart's been here before and they have a little more depth, but it will kind of be like, a fatal victory, if you will. Like Indiana will push Georgia to the brink in a way that like I don't necessarily think that they're going to beat Ohio State in the national championship, which is why I picked Ohio State to beat Georgia in the national championship in this situation. Even though I think Kirby Smart is a better head coach than Ryan Day, even though I think Ohio State's really overconfident right now about everything, this particular bracket breaks their way so many ways. And it's all contingent on not only them beating Indiana, but you need to have Indiana beat up on Georgia before they get to you. And I think that's really the big thing there. I think Ohio State just has enough depth, enough experience, well coached. They would come out of the bracket here. I think Georgia and Indiana could also potentially win this bracket. Texas Tech, not so much. I don't really necessarily know who else could conceivably come out of it here. Again, I don't trust Oregon or Texas A&M for that reason. I think that those are really the teams that could conceivably do it. So based on the penultimate playoff rankings, Ohio State would probably win that bracket more often than not. And I don't know. I don't know what Antonio thinks. Let's see what Antonio thinks here. Let's move on to our penultimate topic of the day with the Antonio Banderas Bowl of the week. Antonio is all about the chickens. So we asked him, what conference championship game you wanted to go. And we told him like, okay, we have opportunities at you know, Charlotte, Indianapolis, Atlanta, Arlington, Detroit, New Orleans, Boise, Harrisonburg, and Jacksonville. And as soon as he heard Jacksonville, he's like, we're going to Jacksonville. I'm like, Antonio, do you know that that's not the same place as Jacksonville, Florida. He said Bulldog, and that's partially why Cody is not here. Cody, Antonio was in charge of buying tickets, and the Cody's plane got messed up. So Cody's flying to Jacksonville, Florida, as opposed to Birmingham, Alabama. Obviously, I could make the drive from Jackson to Jacksonville, Alabama from Atlanta, or really Jacksonville, Florida if I needed to. But Antonio was really excited about the Conference USC championship with Kennesaw State and Jacksonville State. I asked him if he knows what an owl is, and he said he has no idea. The only thing that I try to say, like Kennesaw State is an owl, like night owl, like Archimedes from Watchmen. And again, he just said bulldog. He just didn't care. Um, again, this guy's taking us all over the place. We've been Columbia, South Carolina. We went to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now we're going to Jacksonville, Alabama for Kennesaw State, Jacksonville. The crazy part in this is like, Kennesaw State technically could make the playoff. If they win, it's like a 0.1% chance. Like if extreme chaos happens and they win Conference USA, they might get the 12th seed. Particularly, I think that would require like what? Troy to beat James Madison and the Duke to beat Virginia. Like that's not impossible. I think Duke could definitely beat Virginia. I don't know about Troy beating JMU, but that's within all possibility. And as far as like besides the chickens, like Gamecock's a chicken. Chanticleer's a chicken. Owl, he thinks an owl's a space chicken. Pollo Loco. That's what Antonio keeps saying. I don't really understand why the man like calls everything a bulldog or a chicken. He understands like an animal, a mammal, and a bird, but he doesn't really discern very much from any of that. I also asked like why do you want to go to this game? And he's also convinced that Charles Kelly, the head coach there at Jacksonville State, he's convinced that that's Charlie Kelly from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So, he's riding in my car. He's riding in the car with a worm hat on. He got his denim chicken because denim chicken. He also wants to bury a rotisserie chicken in some jeans at midfield. And Cody's like, they're not gonna let you out of the stadium. And Antonio was like, I am Antonio Banderas. And like, you know what? That's that's fair as well. That's all fair. That's all done. But yeah, Antonio's really excited about, Conference USA's championship here. We're also gonna be doing, just for the record, Cody and I were gonna be doing bowl season this year with Antonio, and it's going to be Smith's theme. It's going to be instead of strange ways, here we come. It's strange bowls, here we come with Antonio. And the next one after this, after the Conference USA Championship, is going to be on Saturday, December 13th for the Bucked Up LA Bowl presented by Gronk. Again, he thinks Gronk's a chicken. So, Gronk, 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 that's basically what he said. So we're going to hang out with Gronk. Cody's got some amazing ideas. We have no idea who's playing in that game. I think it's like a former Pac-12 school and a Mountain West school. It's going to be so dumb. It's going to be unbelievable, but we're so excited about that. And, this is the one thing I was kind of wishing Cody was here for today. Our final JLN of the season. We're going to go 9 deep with some Nine Inch Nails. And because there's 9 conference championships games, rather than have like, what game do you have for the song? What song is this game? And because, Conference USA is one of the 9, I'm going to pick these games based on Nine Inch Nails songs. So moving on down here. Did I even spell Novocaine right? That gets in my head. Green Day spells it one way. Yeah, Novocaine, Green Day. There you go. So Conference USA, the Nine Inch Nails song I have for this is "As Alive as You Need Me to Be." This is the one for the new Tron Ares soundtrack. I saw that music video there. God, Trent Reznor looks good. For just he's always just taking care of himself, even though he's not. He's truly an enigma. Um, the reason I have "As Alive as You Need Me to Be" is Kennesaw State's cultural playoff chances are as live as need me to be. And even if this is in Jacksonville, Alabama, I'm going to go with the Hootie Hoo Owls up the road. Jerry Mack might be getting that job in Memphis. So I'm taking Kennesaw State to win Conference USA. Moving on to the Sun Belt, Troy at James Madison. This is the game that I have for closer. Um, I kind of feel that like, how the song goes, you let me violate you, you let me desecrate you, all this other stuff, help me get closer to God. Well, James Madison is going to violate and desecrate everything with Troy, and it's going to get him close to the college football playoff. I don't know if they'll get in, but like they're right there on the cutting room floor. I'm pulling for JMU here. They are going to lose Bob Chesney at some point, but like, you know what? JMU has been a phenomenal program at the FCS level. They've transitioned perfectly. I'd love to see them be the first Sun Belt team to make the playoff. Moving on to the Mountain West, UNLV at Boise State. Why couldn't New Mexico play in this game? Like, I still don't understand why that's the case. Um, Based on like people's opinions and like Bill Connolly, like if Bill Connolly gets to decide who plays your championship, can just find a new way to figure it out. So the game, the Nine Inch Nails song I have for this is "Down in It" because at one point like they were up above it, now they're down in it. Like at first, at some point, the Mountain West were on top. They had the number three seed with Boise State last year, getting a first round bye with Ashton Genty. And I'm gonna take Boise State to win. This game's at home, and it's gonna knock UNLV out of the playoff too. Boise's got no chance; they're 8-4. But I like seeing Dan Mullen squirm. And we'll see if Spencer Danielson will find another way to get a raise out of this. So yeah, give me the Broncos there. Let's move on to the American, the last game on the Friday slate. These are all on Friday. North Texas at Tulane. This game, from a Nine Nails perspective, is the hand that feeds. I kind of feel like, they got to bite the hand that feeds to get them into the playoff. I don't know if like, whoever wins is going to probably be the 12 seed. They could be the 11 if Duke beats for Virginia. And yeah, two outgoing coaches with North Texas with Eric Morris taking over at Oklahoma State, and then John Summerall is going to leave Tulane for Florida. You know what? Give me North Texas here. I feel like they've been disrespected all season long, and I think they win the American, and then they welcome Neil Brown in, and it's going to be weird. I think it's going to be a fantastic game. I think that this game is going to come down to like the final play, and North Texas is going to have like one of those all-time moments of college football lore. I'm pulling for that for the Mean Green and Dakota Gregory and Neil Brown, I guess. All right, let's move on to the last Group of Five championship game. That would be the MAC with Miami, Ohio versus Western Michigan at Ford Field in Detroit. This is March of the Pigs. The lead single off of the Downward Spiral. I don't know if you guys have seen the music video, but Trent Reznor's playing. It's like Trent Reznor and his backing band are playing, and whenever they're playing up-tempo music, he's going around, he's fighting different people. Whether that's Robin Fink, shout out Walton High School, Chris Rennet on drums, Danny Leonard on bass, whoever's on keys, just going nuts. And I kind of feel that like when the song ends, it kind of ends like a very nice, sweet refrain, and the pigs are all going to sleep. Whatever it is, it's a new song I'm learning a lot about. Give me Western Michigan over the Red Hawks. I think Lance Taylor is about to. Western Michigan's either going to be really good next year or they're really good now. They've been phenomenal in the MAC. They've got a really good head coach. This is the former offensive coordinator at Louisville. Lance Taylor's looking for bigger and better things coming up here soon. So that's what I got there. All right. Final four games 6, 7, 8, 9. Your Big 12 championship. BYU versus Texas Tech at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. That's head like a hole. Bow down before the one you serve. You're going to get what you deserve. And Texas Tech would rather die than give you control, BYU. Guns up. Texas Tech is going to get a first round bye. They're just getting started here. We saw what happened in Lubbock. Maybe this game's a little bit closer than what that was previously. But for the most part, I don't see this being particularly close. I feel bad for BYU, but then again, maybe I don't. Guns up. Texas Tech wins the Big 12 championship. And we're obviously doing this by time order. It's like when the games kick off. Of course, we've gotten to my game, the SEC championship between Georgia and Alabama at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. This is hurt, baby. This is hurt. I hurt myself today. I don't know if this is the Johnny Cash version or the Nine Inch Nails version, but like, do I really want to pick Georgia? I do. I really do. Oh my God. I'm panicking on the spot. I've got Alabama highlighted saying that they're going to win here. So maybe I do an emo hedge and pick the Crimson Tide here. Because again, Georgia always loses this game, and I will be hurt. I'll be working a super long day on Saturday, doing the show by myself while we're dog sitting. It's going to be great. So emo hedge here. Let's go with Alabama over Georgia. Your Big Ten championship going on at night. Indiana at versus Ohio State in Indianapolis at Lucas Oil Stadium. This is only, there is no you, there is only me. Um, Mr. Self-Destruct might be, I don't know if that's Ryan Day or Kurt Signetti, but I'm going to take Ohio State here to win this game. The depth is kind of the big thing that I've been thinking about. And even though Brian Hartline's probably looking to go to South Florida, Brian Haynes might get a job at some point too. Until I see otherwise, I'm going to take Ohio State to beat Indiana here. And then the final game, ACC, Duke versus Virginia at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte. You are the perfect drug. This game's gonna be dumb. This game's gonna be so dumb. We're gonna be watching a game that shouldn't matter, but it does. It's gonna be unbelievable because we dog sit in a Virginia household a lot. Give me the Who's to win. Virginia Cavaliers are moving on. So let me recap this. I've got Kennesaw State beating Jacksonville State to win Conference USA. James Madison beating Troy in the Sun Belt. Boise State beating UNLV in the Mountain West. North Texas beating Tulane in the American. Western Michigan beating Miami, Ohio in the MAC. Texas Tech beating BYU in the Big 12. Alabama beating Georgia in the SEC. Ohio State beating Indiana in the Big 10, and Virginia beating Duke in the ACC. So in that situation, so just to wrap up on this here, real quick, coming up on an hour doing this. We know that Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana are all locks out of the Big Ten. We also know that Georgia, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma are locks out of the SEC. We also know Texas Tech is a lock out of what, the Big 12. So if in this situation, Alabama gets in as the 9 seed, I think your 10 is going to go to Miami because they're going to honor the head-to-head. And Virginia is the 11, and North Texas is the 12. And that's my college football playoff field. I haven't got the seating all figured out yet. I'll probably touch on that probably a little bit more, with what I expect to on Saturday night show before Sunday. But yeah, this is a lot of fun here. And this was episode 232 of False Start. You can follow me, John Buhler, on Twitter or the X at Buhler118. You can follow my absent co-host Cody Williams at ThisIsA20. You can follow the show at CFB False Start. Like, rate, listen, subscribe, review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere there's podcasts. Give us a 5-star review on any platform. Really helps the show grow. Really glad that we're over 50 subscribers. You guys have been great. Been watching a lot of stuff here. Really digging the playlist too. Definitely check those out. We've got our bi-weekly shows. We got playoff goldilocks from last year, which we didn't do for manpower reasons. We've got 3 yards of cloud of punt on there. We got some of our season previews. If you think there's something you want to add, like just the dumbest shows we've done, the big dumper gets on there. Whatever it is, Halloween episodes, like we want to make this better for you. We got really big things in store for you guys here in 2026. We can't believe that we're almost done with the season. The regular season's done. It's postseason right now. Cody will be back, I think, on Monday show, maybe. If not, he'll be on Thursday. And at that point, we're gonna be rolling up the meat sleeves. Figuring out what we're going to be doing there. Just knowing him, he's probably going to get stuck in Tennessee because New Mexico things. The guys over there, they love to like drill into fiber optic cables, do things, operate time on a sundial. Like they couldn't get his shirt jacket ready in time, man. Like he's got to commute from Los Alamos to Albuquerque. That's a 4-hour drive combined there and back. So it's unbelievable. But yeah, I'm really excited, or actually, I'm kind of terrified for this week because Georgia's playing Alabama, and we always know how that goes. Once again, thanks for listening, and this is False Start.